Let's take a look now at using dashed lines in our artwork. So what we'll do is we'll fit everything in the window, and we are actually going to focus on our flyer down here in the lower right hand side. Okay, let's zoom in on that. And we'll also go ahead and open another document that we have in our project file. So bring up your File Open dialog, go back to the desktop where you located your project files, and inside the Illustrator files folder, we're going to open this one called coupon.ai. All right. Go ahead and click open, and if you want, we can zoom in on that. Now you can see it's an artwork I've already created, basically a fictitious discount coupon, and it's got this border around the outside that we want to sort of apply a dash to that suggests that you maybe cut it out and post it in with your application or something. So what we'll do is we'll select the whole thing, it's an entire group, and we'll just copy this into memory, close the file down, and then paste it into our artwork. Now we do want to make sure we have the right layer selected, and we'll put this on the backdrop, let's say, because if we unlock that, click on our grid here, we can see that the grid is indeed on the backdrop color. All right. With that selected, we can just go ahead and paste our artwork in, select the grid as well, and then with a no shift key selected, click on the grid once again to turn that into a key align object. And then in the align options, we can say align our coupon right and to the bottom. All right. If it's going to be cut out, we do want it to be in the bottom. It'd be very difficult to cut it out if it was in the center. So now that's in the right position, let's zoom in so we can see it nice and close. And just to be on the safe side, instead of using direct selection, what we can do is, because this is a group, we can double click on it to go into isolation mode. All right, so now every element in here is separate. We've got the background, we've got the stroke, and then we've got the graphics. And just so you know, that's an option. We can double click on the graphics as well to now isolate them within the other group. All right, it's very, very cool that all of these things can be done through simple isolation. This used to be a nightmare in the past. So now that we've gone into multiple isolations, I'm just going to double click back out to the main artwork. Once again, select our coupon, double click to go into the first isolation mode. So the stroke here around the outside is what we wish to affect, and we're going to come over to the stroke panel here and apply a rather thick stroke. Let's maybe go up to, I don't know, 6 point, just so we can see what's going on. So when we did the single line, I mentioned about the alignment of the stroke being central, and you can see that the same rule does apply here. We've got 6 points, 3 points on either side. However, Illustrator, when you have a closed path, allows you to affect the alignment of the stroke. We can see that here in the stroke panel. We've currently got the first item selected, which, as you can see, is center. The next option is inside. This is the one that I like to use. If you've got a thick stroke on an object that you've created at a specific size, adding a thick stroke to it is actually essentially changing the size of that shape. And sometimes it makes sense to put the stroke inside and then your outer dimensions remain the same. Likewise, you can switch to an outer option, which will put the thickness of the stroke outside of your shape, all right? So in this instance, what we would do is choose inside, but we're going to add a dashed line, so we really negate that there. So I just wanted to point that out because it is important when you're doing solid, thick strokes that you might want to choose inside or outside. So I'm going to set that back to center, and I'm maybe going to knock this down to something a little less intense. Maybe 2 or 3 point is quite enough. What we want to do here is turn on the dashed line option. Okay, now when we turn this on, again, it depends on whether you've played around with Illustrator before. You may have one or other of these selected. I'm going to make sure that the first one is highlighted. This is how Illustrator used to work. If you applied a dashed line, it basically was created evenly throughout the entire shape. So what we're getting here is a 12-point dash with a 12-point gap. That's the default, and that is applied consistently. It doesn't matter if you have corners or lines, different shapes or anything else. It's applied evenly around the whole shape, which then gives you these odd-looking corners. Okay, now if you've ever used dash lines before in Illustrator, this may well have been a frustration. If you have a dash line, it'd be very cool if the corner itself was even and it had like a sort of 6 point on this side, 6 point down here, and when you got across to this side, it also had 6 point here, 6 point here. So you get these nice definite corners. Well, that's never worked before, but now this is built into Illustrator CS5. If you come over here and click on the second option, you can see that it's called Align Dashes to Corners. So if we go ahead and turn that on, you can see the difference. It's a lot neater, and it's also aligned everything else. Not only are the corners nice, but we've got 3 even strokes here, we've got 2 down here, we've got 3 across the bottom. Now it does look slightly strange because there are much bigger gaps here, so really the 12 point is not working for us here. So let's just change that. We have the ability to add multiple dash and gap values. Okay, so let's maybe change our first dash here to say 6 point. say OK, and maybe we'll change the gap so that it's an even 4 point. All right, that looks a little bit better, but again, because we have this align option turned on, we've now got nice, even, and consistent corners all the way around, and this looks a lot better when it comes to artwork. So if I deselect that, you can see the finished result. So let's go back out of isolation mode there because our coupon update has been done. We can zoom back down and see, yeah, that looks very nice there in the corner of our artwork. Now we're going to take a look at some new features again in the stroke panel of CS5, and to do that we're going to open a different Illustrator file. So bring up your open dialog box, and from the desktop locate your project files, go into the Illustrator files, and let's open this one called lecomap.ai. If we go ahead and open that, you can see it's a map that I've created. It's slightly stylized, it's not true to scale or anything else, but it's based around the town of Lecco, which is in the Italian lakes. And what I've done is on the Legends layer, I've created a couple of red dots which would suggest where our hotel and our bike shop might be for our bike tour company. Again, this is fictitious, but it gives us a really nice idea of how to use some of our tools. I'm going to zoom in here on that area so we can see where we are. And what we want to do is create a nice curved line which comes out from the hotel and points down at this location with an arrowhead on the end. All right. Now, arrowheads have been a function inside of Illustrator for a long time, but they always required an effect or something for you to do manually and construct and scale, that kind of thing. Well, arrowheads are now built into the stroke panel. You can see that down here on the right-hand side. So what we want to do is create a curved line that comes from hotel and drops down into the center here. So for that, we're going to use a tool we haven't seen yet. We're going to come up to the line tool. Now the arc tool, we can draw in two different angles, basically. If we position our cursor on the outside of hotel, you see our smart guides are very nicely centering it on the word. That's very cool. As we click and drag downwards, though, towards our red dot here, the way the arc tool draws, you can see it draws an arc downwards. So what we need to do, undo that, we're going to start from our red dot, dead in the center, click and drag upwards and come towards the center of hotel here, and you'll see that this actually changes the arc itself so it's on the outside of where we were and gives us the shape that we need. All right, let's go ahead and do exactly the same down here for our bike shop legend. Click in the center of the red shape, drag up and make sure we center on the word bike shop, and you can choose how far away from the outside that actually is. All right, so we've got our two arcs. Let's go back to the main selection tool so we don't create any more. Hold down the shift key and select both of them so we can edit them both at the same time. Now the first thing we'll do over here in the stroke panel is change the weight of these. 1 point for my liking is a little too thick, so let's make that about 0.75. And whilst we're here, just for attention to detail, what I'm going to do is apply a rounded cap. Even though we're going to apply an arrowhead down here, it is very nice if we just round off the edges, and what I'll do is zoom up there so you can see it. Just that little attention to detail. We don't need a squared edge there. It's up to you if you want to apply it. I like to see little things like that. Okay, so let's just scroll down here and zoom down into place. All right, the two of them are still highlighted. What we'll do is come down to the arrowheads option and apply either an arrowhead to the start or to the end. Well, remember the way that the arc tool forced us into drawing the shape, basically the start and finish point, we had to start here and finish up here. We want to make sure that our arrowheads are applied to the start, okay? So the first option here is the start. We can click and choose an arrowhead. What I'm going to do is maybe choose arrow 2. That's the style I'm looking for. Perfect. Applies it exactly where it needs to be. A couple of other options that we can choose here. The align option. Basically, we can choose whether the arrowhead aligns to the very end of the path, which is exactly what we do need. You also have the ability to extend it beyond the end of the path. So that's another option you might use in future. Let's go ahead and keep it as it is. What we can also do is affect the scale factor here. We can choose how big the arrowhead is in comparison to the width of the stroke. So I'm going to knock that down to around 70% there. I think that will actually do the job for us. So if I come over here now and click to deselect, we've got pretty good looking lines. We've got a nice smooth curve that was constructed using the arc tool. We've rounded off the edges there just as an attention to detail, but more importantly, slap bang in the middle of our red dot, we've got a beautifully scaled and very editable, as you can see here in the panel, arrowhead which has been applied exactly where we need it. So at this point you could save this and update the map if you want to, but hopefully that's given you a really good idea of how the arrowheads function inside of Illustrator CS5.